this next part is about what I was pretty much getting into in the last video. And this is about the collective goal of, well, you could say it's the collective goal of humanity, but it's technically and implicitly the collective goal of all life. Um, Even though humans are essentially the only creatures capable of consciously perceiving the world, are the only creatures capable of consciously perceiving the world. We all have the same goal, and if we don't have it, then we have the wrong goal. And so this is the goal that should be highest. This is the principle that should be highest. And so this is called the goal, reproduction, because that is the goal. Now it's more than that, but if we're going to speak biologically, then that's essentially it. I mean, the goal is to grow up, get to the age where you can reproduce, find a good mate, reproduce with them, and then raise your child properly. Raise your and to put that in biological or evolutionary terms, raise your child with the best chance of them reproducing as well, right? And so it's something like that. So it's more than reproduction, but it's like the goal, the continuation of the species. That's the goal. And so maybe I'll change the video title to that. I don't know. But that's essentially the goal. Okay, so imagine that you are thirsty. So you drink from a glass of water. But then you think to yourself, if you're more philosophically inclined than the average person, why is it that I drink from this glass? Yes, I'm thirsty, but so what? Why can't I just ignore this desire? An answer could be, because this is a biological cue attempting to keep you hydrated and ultimately to keep you alive. Now imagine that you are hungry and you ask the same question. Well, you could answer it the same way. I think those are good questions, and that is a good answer to both. Also, think about your desire to sleep. These three desires are biological cues meant to keep you alive. The question then becomes, for what purpose am I alive? Or what is it that I should do with my life that my physiology is prompting me to continue? Or why should I remain alive? That impulse to eat, drink, and sleep is nested under the greater impulse to live, and the impulse to live is nested under the greater impulse to reproduce. So you live for the purpose of reproduction and then raising the child properly. The purpose of our lives, what we should do with them, and why we should remain alive is to reproduce. In reductive and strictly biological terms. More than this, it is to take care of our children, to increase their well-being, but in evolutionary terms, to increase their chances of reproduction. The purpose or meaning of life is ultimately to continue in its propagation across time. Humans typically become capable of reproduction. Actually, I'll leave that for the end. So, what I'm outlining here is that we have a bunch of systems in our body, a bunch of biological systems. There's at least three that I outlined: the desire to drink, the desire to eat, and the desire to sleep. Those three are all pointing towards the desire to live. But that desire to live is itself pointing to the propagation of the human species across the longest span of time possible. That's the goal. That's the point. That's the meaning of the desires. That's what they're trying to get you to do. They're trying to get you to be a good parent. Well, to at least be a parent, but to be a good parent, especially, right? Because you don't just want to have a child and then run away or stop trying to survive. You want to have a child and then you want to raise that child, because human beings have a long dependency period. Maybe it's 18 years and then the extra 9 months, but whatever. Human beings have a very long dependency period, and they need parental care during that time period. Really, they need it from the biological parents, because there's studies that show that if a child lives with non-biological parents, they're 100 times more likely to experience physical abuse. I believe that's the statistic. It's increasingly worse, incredibly worse for children if they are not with their biological parents. It's very, very, very important for their well-being and their proper growth into the future. And so that's what these desires are prompting us to do. They're trying to get us to do this. Okay, so that's the main goal. And that's what the goal should be. It should be to survive, have kids, and then help them learn and grow. And then human beings are sort of special. We also help our grandchildren. So that's helpful too. Humans typically become capable of reproduction around the time of early adolescence. Now, in the modern world, this is usually not the standard or socially acceptable age to have children. It is instead later, around the early 20s or so. We know, for example, that men tend to settle down and become less criminal and more stable around age 27. For those first 18 years, we were developing and transforming in all sorts of ways. Most biologically notable is perhaps the increase in our body mass, brain development overall, becoming a fully sized adult. However, our brain takes several more years to fully develop, around the early 30s or so. And of course, during this period, men and women, speaking of sex, not gender, are looking for a mate, and I mean a mate of the opposite sex, as I'm speaking of reproduction. This is because of the sexual impulse built into the physiology of humans. We'll actually talk about that sexual impulse in the first video on the biological section, so we're not going to get into that right now. So, we have this long dependency period, and that means that the goal isn't just reproduction. It's more like successful. What would you even say? It's like successful parenting, successful child caring. You know, it's because you have to learn and grow as an adolescent, and even before that, but from the time you're born to at least adolescent, but often young adult, all the way through there. For like 2 decades, you have to learn and grow, and you have to do that properly. And then you have to have a kid, and then you have to do that, and then you have to take care of that kid for 20 years properly. And that all of that is the goal. So having a good family, having a stable family, that's the goal. Right? That's the meaning of our lives. That's the most important thing. And you know, I think that might I think a lot of people aren't going to like that. And I'm not saying it just to provoke people. I'm saying it because I think it's true. And you know, like I'm a young teenage male, and like I'm saying this as someone who I've seen older people. I've seen old people, old men and old women. And I've seen middle-aged people. Having children is the most important thing in your life. Right? I mean, because you can think about this, right? You can think about like Isaac Newton. I'm pretty sure he didn't even have any kids. I don't know though. Maybe he did. Or Albert Einstein. Or Adolf Hitler. You know, like these people aren't known for their family. They aren't known for, you know, having kids and reproducing. But, you know, that's also because everybody does that. Most people do that. Actually, not everybody anymore, but most people do that. But see, if it weren't for people having kids, those people would have never existed. In fact, if sexual reproduction never occurred, no one would be here. And the universe as we know it would be nothing like it is as we know it. It would be completely different. Right? So this is the most important thing you can do with your life. The most important thing you can do with your life is become a responsible citizen, get to the point where the opposite sex finds you attractive, have a child with them, and parent successfully. Raise the child well. Raise the child better than your parents raised you. That's the goal. And there's nothing more important than that you could possibly do than that. I mean, because you might say, well, what about, you know, like doctors? The job doctors do, they save lives. Well, there wouldn't be any lives if it weren't for reproduction. So I hope you can see this. There's nothing more important than this. Nothing is greater than this. There's no goal greater than to become someone that your future spouse would enjoy being around and to have kids and raise them properly. There's nothing more meaningful that you could do. There's nothing more beneficial to the human species than that. There's nothing greater. There's no career. There's nothing you could possibly do that's greater than that. Nothing. And so, well, that's the point of this video. That's the point I've been trying to make. And so over the next 2 videos, we're going to talk about the men and the women and what their job is evolutionarily, and then we're going to wrap up the evolution section.